Good morning. I'm going to start a class, an introductory class on SQL, and the major two softwares that we're going to be using for this class is Mysql Workbench, as you can see on the screen, also MySQL Server. It is very easy to get it. Just go online and download the Workbench. I think the size of the Workbench is 41.6, and the one of MySQL is 131 megabytes if you are using Windows system. So if in case you have some other issue, you can contact me so that I'm going to help you out. So we've installed, as you can see on this system, we've installed MySQL. Let me try and open it so that you'll see that we've installed it. My SQL Workbench. I'll just type, okay, Workbench. Can you see? I've installed it already. So, but there's no way MySQL Workbench will work until you have installed the MySQL server. So that's the reason why we'll go and quickly install the MySQL server. So let me go to the download. I was able to download it. So this is the server. So I'll double click on it. Next, accept, next, typical, install. So don't forget what I said. There is no way MySQL Workbench can ever work without the MySQL server. So while the installation is going on, let me quickly prove to you that this cannot work without the server. Now, by the time you get to MySQL, the first thing you do is, to the Workbench, click on this plus sign. Anytime you want to connect to a database, and that's why you must understand that when you are learning SQL, you have two basic functions to do. The first one is possibly maybe you want to use to manipulate data. Then at the same time, you can help a company create their database that they want to use for a particular software. So that's why, as a data scientist, you can also be good in software architecture, because the software architecture part is where you create a database for them so that the software will work for the server, for the database. So now the first thing is click on plus, because you need to create a connection. So it's going to bring, you can use say set up new connection. So you can give your connection a name. Possibly I create connection based on the company that I want to work with. And you must understand that sometimes the company could actually give you a particular file that they want you to what? To analyze for them, or that they want to build a model with. So I create different connection for different companies. So for example, maybe I want to create this for UBA. I'll say UBA. I'll call this standard TCP. This one is local. Maybe I just want to use it locally on my system. This one that is over SSH, for example, if I'm dealing with highly secure data, I will actually connect using this. But this is a default. Let me just pick standard TCP. So can you see it's a method to use to connect to RDBMS, Relational Database Management System. Don't worry, as you continue in the course, you have a more insight into what we call Relational Database Management System. So after that, just leave the defaults, the host name, the ports. So definitely if I'm working on a server, so definitely the person will give me the credentials of their server. You understand? Their database. Every database, there is an host name where the database is being created into. You understand? There is a port and there is a what? username, and there's a password, but by default, let's just use a default one and click on what? Okay. Can you see that I've created a what? A connection. So I'm going to double click on this. Just follow what it's saying while the other one is installing. I think what is prompting this? He said, do you want to allow this app to change this? I say yes. I guess it's from, don't forget that we are doing installation for MySQL server. So I don't want to waste time. That's why I penned that and I started taking you on MySQL Workbench. Now, you could notice it said no connection established. Why? There is no MySQL server. Is that right? Okay. So let's go back to our installation that we are doing. So it's going to write complete the MySQL server setup. So I'll click on what? Finish. Now, when you are doing your installation, please note this. Before you successfully install your connection, it must bring this page after you have clicked, after you click on the finish icon. In case when you are installing your MySQL server and you discover that it's not bringing this, is a sign that it is not completed. Nobody should open that page again. I'm recording. So sorry. So now I'm going to click on, so while you are doing this step, make sure that you are connected to the internet. So I'll click on next, next, next. Just be clicking on next. I will tell you what. Now, this password is very important. So that means you put a password that you can never forget. So please put a password that you can forget for any reason and make sure there's no mistake. Don't make a mistake, because if you make a mistake, so you repeat the same password in the next part, very sorry, you will not be able to work with MySQL Workbench. So after that, I'll click on what? Next. Is that clear? I'll click on next. Now, the essence of this is that maybe for a big company, maybe you have different people that you want to be working on a particular database. So that's the reason of adding new users, so that everybody will not be using the same same details. So, but there's no need for that thing. So I'll click on what? Next, next. So please select this so that at least for a start, you can have a dummy database that you can practice with. That's the essence of this tool. The first database is what? Sakila. The second is what? It does not matter. Just for you to have something to work with in case you don't have a database. So I'll click on what? Execute. And you make sure that all this is selected. So that's the reason why you must connect to the internet. So you're going to wait. So as we are waiting here, let's go back and see what is really wrong. Now, what I'm actually doing now is I'm trying to show you the overview of my SQL Workbench. And take note of this. The fact that you're using MySQL Workbench does not mean that every company that you want to work with as a database expert will use MySQL Workbench. But this is a major software that is being invented by SQL themselves. And I think it's the most popular. There are some companies that they use Visual Studio. Some companies use Notepad++, and the likes. But it's still the same SQL code or SQL query that works in them all. Exactly. Now, looking at this, there are some common features. You could see a tab here, administration. You could see schema. I've told you the meaning of schema. Schema simply means what? Database. And I've told you the code to create database, which is what? Create schema and the name of the database that you want to create. And in case you are ask, what is database made of? Database is made up of what? Of tables. There are some databases that can have as much as 1,000 tables. Some can have just 2 tables. And you can create as much as possible. So this is schema, and it's telling you that there's no schema. Can you see at the top? No schema. Because So now let's go to the administration. Administration is just trying to tell you that you can manage your server, you can check your server status, your client connection, your user and privilege, your status, and the likes. Are you following? But it's still writing boldly in red, no connection established, because our MySQL has not been. Can you see? Everything is marked. I'll click on what? Next. Don't forget, in case you are watching, please start from the beginning so that you understand. Then I'll click on what? Finish. So it's at this level that I've successfully installed my MySQL server. So after that, let's close this one and make sure that it's working perfectly. So what I'm going to do next is that I will now reopen my what? My workbench. But in case maybe after you open your workbench, it's not still working, it means that you will need to restart your system. You understand? For you to see the workbench on the MySQL server that you joined. So I'm going to open. So let's see the aha. So it's a sign that I've seen it because it's asking for that what password that you putted when you are creating your SQL server. Okay, so you can save it in case you can forget. That's the answer of this. Okay. So if it can take you to the next place, continue anyways, a sign that the password you entered is correct. Wow, can you see that is not saying that error again? So that means it has seen your what? Your MySQL server. But let me quickly let you know something. Can you see that when I click on schema, I can see the what? The circular and the word. Now, in case you install your MySQL server and still it's still bringing this boldly, is a sign that there are some settings. And I'm going to quickly go through this to some people that are facing this issue. Oh, I've installed my server. I installed it perfectly, but my MySQL Workbench is not still working. So what are you going to do? Just quickly go to what? Quickly go to your and search for services. What do I call it? Services. So I'll click on services. Now, when I click on services, okay, by the time I click on services, I will go and look for my SQL. My SQL. I'm going to hem. My SQL. Can you see my SQL L90? This is the what? This is the server that you just installed, and it's telling you that it's what? It's running. So in case it's not running, definitely there's a what? There's a problem. So you can easily what? Right click and click on what? Start. Exactly. You will notice that if I stop this thing now, it's not going to work again. And sometimes, possibly when you start, it's opening itself again. It means that some other software that is also a server is what? There's a conflict. You understand? They are trying to drag between each other. So what you do is that, for example, like in my own case, I have some other server that I'm using on my system. And one of it is what? WAM server. Some people can be using XAMPP. So in that case, anytime I notice this, I will go and off the what? The other one so that the same way, anytime I want to use my WAMP, it won't work. I will have my what? My server so that my WAMP will work. If you are building a Java software, we use MAMP. So definitely, do you understand? All these things are simply their server. So don't think that it's only MySQL server that we have. We have different servers. So your system could be conflicting against each other. So because of time, let me continue with my introduction on my SQL Workbench and server. So what is the next thing? Let me quickly set up my overview so that it can work perfectly. Now, one of the things you can do is that you can actually drag this part so that where you'll be putting your code will be bigger. Can you see? I've seen the different this thing. Let me try and open one of it. Let me open Circular. After you open the database that looks like coin, then you go to the table. You what? You open again. Exactly. So when you open, all these ones are what? Are tables. Do you understand? You can see actor, address, category. So the reason why they call it relational, that is all these tables can relate with each other for a particular purpose. That's what makes a software when they relate with each other. Then let's also look at, I can take it back, close the tables. then I'll also close it. Let's go to Word, the tables, the countries. Are you getting all these things? But before I continue doing something, let me quickly create a what? A schema for ourselves. How do you create a schema? You can create it in two ways. It's either you do it with code or you do it manually. So how will I do it with code first? Let's try. Okay, let's do it manually because I think people like to do things manually without using code. So how will I do that? You could see the coin for what? For database. So click on the coin. It will open something. It said, what is the name of the database? So what should we call it? Eh? Thank you. Maybe UBA what? Database. After that, apply is as simple as that. Apply. Been able to create a what? A database. Can you see the database? So database is the same thing. Either you are Facebook, you are whatever company, is the same database. It's the same method. So now I've created what UBA. Let's say I want to create another what? Database. For what? For another company. Let's say Zenith. So but in this case, I want to create it with code. How will I do that? I will say create space what? Schema space what? The name. So it's going to be what? Zenith. Then I will terminate. This is the code to execute. I will run. It has done. So it said create what? Always look at this button. You know, because it might not tell you anything, but this button is where, and in your case, in case you are not seeing this button part, just come. There are three icons there that you can click. If I click on this part now, can you see that I'm not seeing it like I should? So you can play around this one to see what you like or the way you want it to what to be displayed. Exactly. So until you shall love what you are seeing. Exactly. So now, as you can see now that I've created Zenith, how will I know? You can come here and refresh your schema. Can you see? And I can see what? Zenith. But it's all empty. There is no table. How? There is no arrow in front of table to show that there are what? Different tables. But because I don't want to waste time, possibly in the next class, I will start creating table for ourselves. But for today, so that you still have one or two things that you can take home, let's quickly use one of the database that is what? That is here. Exactly. So let's quickly use for Sakila. I'm going to go to Sakila. I'll go to table. Let me look for one of the database I can work with. Should we work with customer? Okay, customer. So if you want to work with customer, now in opening a particular table, there are different ways. Let's open it manually. Just double click on this table in front of it. So when I do, it will open the what? The table. Can you see? That table is always like the table that you see in Excel, in SPSS, in Power BI, in whatever data analysis software. Now, by the time this table is open, make sure you understand each of the variables. What do I mean by variable? Each of the columns, customer ID, the store ID, the first name, the last name, and the likes. So let me close it and try to open a table with code. So how am I going to do this? I don't need to stress myself. I can just go. This first one is to create new query where you put your code. This first icon. So now I want to put my code. Now, in using code, you must select the database. So that's why, how do I know that this database is selected? Can you see that it's boldly in green? So that means I'll just come here. I will say select all the name of the table. The name of the table is what? Customer. And I will terminate. After that, I can highlight it and run. Can you see? It's saying select all from what? Blah, blah, blah. It's giving an error. Exactly. Now, since it's giving an error, select all from customer. Possibly it wants me to say no database selected. How do you select a database? What's the name of the database? Sakila. He wants me to double click on this Sakila. You understand? Now it will work. Run. Can you see that it has run? It has opened. Or if you don't double click on the Sakila, you can easily come like this. Select all from what? You put the name of what? The database Sakila. Is it double L? Single L. Dot what? Table name. You understand? This same way to see what? it will still work. Is that clear? Now, after this, let me write one more code so that we'll round up the class. Another thing that I can simply do is that let's quickly try and change this all. That asterisk means select all columns. When you say all what? Columns. I want to select just two columns, just the first name and what? Last name. So I will say select what? What is the, when I look at the column, the first column is what? First underscore what? Name, comma. Anytime you put comma, it's like you are ruling. Comma what? Comma last underscore what? Name. After that, I'll put what? From where? From customer. And I'll terminate and run. Did you see what you are saying? Just the first name and the last name. So with this, please take your time to install your MySQL Workbench successfully on your server, then do the simple queries that I've done today. So see you in the next class. Thank you.